They said the footage looked fake, grainy, dramatic, too smooth to be real. An old camcorder's feed, timestamp flickering 2:43 a.m., tucked away in the training archives of Fort Ryland. A dimly lit weapons locker, a lone figure in olive fatigues kneeling on cold concrete, blindfold wrapped tight across her eyes, the matte black of a scratched M4 carbine resting across her lap. A rusted relic, they called it. But on that tape, her fingers moved with surgical grace, disassembling, cleaning, and reassembling the rifle with the kind of speed that made even seasoned instructors go silent. And when the final click echoed through the room, bolt-locked, action clean, she simply stood, removed the blindfold, and walked away before anyone could speak. No applause. No theatrics. Just facts caught on tape. The record time-stamped. The silence louder than any praise. Her name was Maya Trenton, and she was never supposed to outshine anyone. Especially not the captain who mocked her to her face. If you've ever seen someone quiet prove the world wrong, silently and completely, like and subscribe, because this story? It's about every underdog who never raised their voice but made history all the same. It all began 3 weeks earlier under the beating sun of Fort Ryland's central courtyard, during weapons inspection. The heat baked the brash trim of the captain's uniform and cast sharp shadows under everyone's eyes. They lined up, 30 soldiers in rank and file, boots locked, rifles at their sides, faces blank. Captain Rourke paced with a smirk carved into his face like it had tenure. He thrived on tension, on nerves, on humiliation as sport. And Maya, stationed second to the end of the first row, had become his favorite target. She was too quiet, too precise, too non-combat, as he put it, too often. She rarely spoke, barely smiled, and carried the same rifle every day, one with a nicked foregrip, faded paint, and a mismatched rear sight she'd never replaced. "You keep carrying that thing like it's a family heirloom," Rourke barked, stopping in front of her. He had the weapon like it might contaminate his uniform. "Is this what they gave you at basic? Or did you lose a bet?" A couple of soldiers chuckled, though not loudly. Maya didn't respond. She just held the rifle closer, like a violinist adjusting grip before a solo. Rourke leaned in, his voice dropping low. "Bet that antique jams every other Mac. What is this, a Civil War parade piece?" Maya blinked once, then said quietly, "It's mine, sir." "I know it. That's not the same thing as knowing how to use it." The smirk again. Disgay swept the group. "Anyone want to bet I can break this thing down faster than our little librarian here?" Maya didn't flinch, didn't even look at the others. "I'll take that bet," she said. Her voice was calm, but not passive. It was the kind of quiet that arrives after a decision has already been made. Rourke raised a brow. "What, now? You gonna do it with a decoder ring and a YouTube tutorial?" "Blindfolded," she added. "Me and you. Same conditions." The courtyard fell silent, except for a crow calling from the perimeter tower. Someone shifted nervously. Someone else exhaled slowly, like this was either going to be a career-ending stunt or the beginning of something no one expected. "You serious?" Rourke asked. Maya just nodded once. It wasn't arrogance. It was inevitability. By the time the exercise was approved and scheduled, word had already spread. It would be informal, no brass, no ceremony. Just a captain with something to prove and a private with something she didn't feel the need to explain. The challenge was set for that Friday, in a supply locker near the West Barracks. Neutral ground. 2 rifles, both standard issue, both verified functional. 2 blindfolds. 1 stopwatch. Maya arrived early. Always did. She warmed up with soft hand motions in the air, practicing each step like a pianist rehearsing in silence. Rourke arrived 7 minutes late, wearing a grin and chewing gum. "Hope you brought your lucky socks," he quipped, tossing his blindfold on the table. Maya didn't answer. She was already tying hers around her head, hands steady, breathing even. The room filled with half a dozen observers, peers, instructors, one silent master sergeant whose only comment was, "Keep it fair." On command, the timer started. Plastic and steel hit the table in tandem. Springs flicked, pins rolled, gas tubes hissed free from their grooves. Rourke muttered under his breath when his extractor pin hit the floor. Maya didn't make a sound. Her hands moved like memory, like language without words. At 1 minute 38 seconds, she locked the final pin, chambered the bolt, and clicked the safety into place. A full second and a half before Rourke even found his rear sight. No one spoke. No one had to. The stopwatch did the talking. Maya stood up, adjusted the blindfold off her forehead, and gave the captain a single nod before walking out. No taunt. No grin. Just presence. And back in the present, years later, when someone unearthed that dusty tape, the footage went viral inside the ranks. An unnamed PFC schooling a captain in complete silence. No medals pinned that day. No parade. Just a new page in Fort Ryland's unofficial legends. And from that moment on, no one called her a librarian again. They said you could tell what kind of soldier someone was by how they handled their weapon, not just in the field, but in silence, when no one was watching, when it was just you, the steel, and the discipline to make it yours. That Friday afternoon, with heat rising and lazy ripples off the tarmac, Maya Trenton didn't just carry her rifle, she moved like someone who had earned the right to be quiet. Inside the West Barracks supply locker, the air was thick with sweat, anticipation, and something unspoken, a kind of pressure you only feel when people expect a train wreck but are too afraid to say it aloud. Folding chairs scraped across concrete. 6 observers from 3 different units stood shoulder to shoulder, 2 sergeants from weapons maintenance, a logistics officer who brought the rifles, a pair of instructors from advanced tactics, and one man no one dared speak over. Master Sergeant Nathan Cole. No one introduced him. He didn't need it. His reputation was carved into every rack and corridor on base. He stood with arms crossed near the corner, eyes locked to Maya, not judging, not smiling, just watching, like a man who'd seen 1,000 stories and was waiting to see how this one ended. Captain Rourke swaggered in 5 minutes late, his grin already on before the door shut. He tossed his clipboard on a folding table, stretched his neck, and said, "All right. Let's see if the library does story time with rifles." A few chuckles from his squad. Maya didn't speak. She was already prepping her gear, laying out the M4 she'd cleaned the night before so thoroughly it looked like new skin under the fluorescent lights. She touched each component with careful precision, her hands working like muscle memory wrapped in patience. Rourke, on the other hand, slapped his rifle down with the kind of flair that said this is already over. He glanced at the observers like he was hosting a game show. "Timer ready?" 2 blindfolds, Master Sergeant Cole said sharply, his voice slicing the tension like a bayonet. "You'll both tie yourselves. No help." Rourke grinned and twirled his between 2 fingers before yanking it down over his eyes like a magician prepping a trick. Maya folded hers slowly, methodically, nodding it behind her head with a gentle tug before adjusting it just once. Her posture didn't change. No nerves. No bravado. Just stillness. Cole stepped forward. "When I say go, you begin. Field strip, clean wipe, reassemble. Chamber check with a full rack. Clean click. Clear." "Copy that," Rourke said, bouncing on his heels. Maya simply said, "Yes, Sergeant." Cole didn't respond. He stepped back. "Go." What happened next didn't make sense to some of the newer recruits watching. Maya's hands didn't grope or fumble. She knew every screw, latch, pin, and catch without sight like she'd been training for this her entire life. Her fingers moved like water over rock, rolling parts apart, laying them flat, cloth wipes pulled from her side pocket, flicked through like calligraphy across metal. Rourke kept pace at first, but by the 30-second mark, you could hear the difference. He cursed under his breath when a spring slipped past his thumb, dropped his buffer 2 with a hollow thud, sweated louder than he moved. Maya said nothing. Her breathing stayed low and steady. Her left hand anchored the upper receiver while her right traced and cleaned. It wasn't just speed, it was reverence. The kind of respect you give to something that kept your father alive when his convoy was pinned in Kandahar, something you trained on with no instructor but memory, something you could disassemble in your dreams with only a heartbeat as metronome. The sound of her parts reassembling became a rhythm. Click, slide, lock, pull, check. When the final click of her bolt-locking home echoed through the room, the stopwatch read 1:38. Silence. Rourke was still fumbling with the lower. "Time," someone said quietly. He kept working. Cole stepped forward, picked up Maya's rifle, turned it over once, checked the action, examined the reassembly. "This is combat clean," he said. "No emotion. Not just fast." Maya slowly pulled the blindfold off her head. Her eyes adjusted to the room's silence, now thick with realization. She looked to no one. Just stood. Steady. Ready. Rourke finally slammed his bolt home, panting. "I had a jam. Something caught." "Yeah," one of the observers muttered. "Your pride." The group didn't laugh. They didn't dare. Cole nodded once to Maya, like a judge acknowledging a champion who didn't ask for a trophy. Then he turned to Rourke. "Captain," he said, "you've got 5 years and a 2-rank lead on her. And she just smoked you in front of 6 instructors. You don't gotta like it, but you'll remember it." Rourke opened his mouth, closed it. Looked down. Maya stepped forward, slung her rifle back onto her shoulder with a quiet click, and walked out of the room before anyone said another word. She didn't wait for validation. She didn't need it. She already knew what that silence meant. Every one of them would tell this story tomorrow. And the only question left was whether they remember her name or just say, there was this one quiet pride. She shut down a captain with her eyes closed. Either way, Maya Trenton had made her mark. It wasn't posted on the official board. No ceremony. No podium. Just a short note left on the whiteboard outside the armory 2 days later, written in dry erase marker. Unofficial field strip blindfold record, 1:38 PFC Trenton. Confirmed. No signature. No announcement. But word spread like brush fire. Within a week, the instructors at Fort Ryland had added her time to the internal doctrine evaluations list, usually reserved for elite combat engineers and senior range instructors. They didn't even ask her, just copied the numbers from the stopwatch and etched it into the curriculum header. In the weeks that followed, Maya returned to her routine like nothing had happened. PT at 0530. Rifle maintenance on Fridays. No swagger, no whispers of remember when because she didn't live in moments. She lived in method. But something had changed. People nodded now when she passed, not out of awe, but out of recognition. The ones who used to smirk now asked quiet questions in the hallway. What grip angle do you use? Where'd you learn to wipe the gas rings that fast? And Maya, without ego, answered simply. Representatives, what no one knew, except perhaps the master sergeant who never said much, was that Maya had learned all of it from her father, a combat armorer who never wore medals and never raised his voice, but could take apart a rifle in the dark while listening to Coltrane vinyls. She'd grown up listening to Metal on Metal in the garage while her dad hummed under his breath, hands moving with reverence. You respect your weapon, he told her once, and it will respect you when it matters. That was her inheritance. Not ribbons, not rake, but readiness. And then came the message, 3 weeks after the challenge. An email with no subject line, just the Fort Ryland seal in the corner. Report to classroom B12, Monday 0700. Bring rifle. She showed up early, as always. The room had a projector screen pulled down, a training dummy on the table, and 30 recruits seated in folding chairs. At the back, a new captain she didn't recognize. At the front, Master Sergeant Cole. He pointed to her calmly. That's the one, he said. That's Trenton. She blinked. Sir, you're teaching the blindfold drill. The words hit like a weight, not in pressure, but in meaning. She was the new standard. A private. Quiet. Overlooked until she wasn't. When she stepped to the front and laid her rifle on the table, the room didn't shuffle or snicker. They leaned in. She didn't speak loudly. She didn't boast. She just said, you don't win with noise. You win with rhythm. Watch closely. And then, with 30 cadets watching every movement like a live broadcast, she tied the same blindfold behind her head, let out one breath, and showed them why the stopwatch didn't lie. And somewhere behind her, Cole was already noting her name for recommendation. Not for a medal. Not even for a promotion. But for something rarer, respect that sticks. Meanwhile, Captain Rourke kept his distance. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't apologetic either. But he'd stopped making jokes. And that was enough. They say she never bragged. Never reminded anyone. She didn't have to. The rifle she carried spoke louder than she ever needed to. And in time, her story became legend, not because she was the fastest, but because she was ready before anyone thought she mattered. And that's the part no one forgets. Fort Ryland still holds that record on its walls. Still shows the footage in select training sessions. And when new cadets ask, who is she, they're told the truth. She was Maya Trenton. She didn't say much. She just outworked you, with her eyes closed.